The case began, as they so often do, in a place of mundane privilege. The reserved parking garage of the Sterling Crest Residences, a high-rise where monthly rents eclipsed the annual salaries of most city workers. The subject was Dr. Lena Washington, a 38-year-old neurosurgeon. The perpetrator was Carol Fletcher, a 54-year-old resident whose wealth was inherited, not earned. The incident occurred on a Tuesday evening, under the sterile, buzzing hum of fluorescent lights. Carol Fletcher, incensed that a black woman in a 10-year-old Toyota Prius would occupy a prime, ground-level parking spot, confronted Dr. Washington. After a verbal assault laced with racial undertones, Mrs. Fletcher took out her car keys and deliberately carved a deep, jagged gash into the side of the Prius, an act she later described to police as correcting a social imbalance. What she did not know was that Dr. Washington was not just a resident, but a woman of immense professional standing and quiet, formidable resolve. The ensuing legal battle would not just be about a scratched car. It would become a multi-million-dollar lesson in the high cost of casual bigotry. The incident started with the quiet sigh of worn brake pads. Lena eased her 2012 Prius into Spot G27, the space she'd paid an extra $300 a month for, precisely because it was near the elevator and saved her precious minutes at the end of a 16-hour surgical shift. Her body ached with a familiar, bone-deep weariness. A complex aneurysm clipping had kept her on her feet, focused and unblinking, for 9 of those hours. All she wanted was to get upstairs to her apartment, eat a bowl of cereal, and fall into bed. As she switched off the ignition, the world fell silent for a moment, the only sound the faint ticking of the cooling engine. She leaned her head back against the worn fabric of the headrest, her eyes closed. That's when a sharp rap on her driver's side window jolted her back to the present. She opened her eyes to see a woman with a tightly permed blonde bob, a face pinched with disapproval, and a small, yapping dog on a rhinestone leash. It was Carol Fletcher from 12B, a woman Lena had only ever seen from a distance, usually complaining to the concierge. Lena politely rolled down her window. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice raspy with fatigue. Carol Fletcher did not return the courtesy. "You need to move your car," she stated, not asked. Her voice was thin and sharp, like shattered glass. "This is a resident's spot." Lena blinked slowly, processing the demand. "I am a resident," she replied, keeping her tone even. "This is my assigned spot. G. 27-inch, she gestured to the small plaque on the wall. Carol's eyes narrowed, scanning Lena from her simple gray scrubs to her worn sneakers. She took in the modest car, its paint faded in places, a stark contrast to the gleaming Teslas and BMWs flanking it. "I highly doubt that," Carol sneered. "These spots are for owners and long-term tenants, not for delivery drivers or staff. If you're here for a pickup, you use the commercial loading zone." The accusation hung in the air, thick and suffocating. Lena felt a familiar, weary anger begin to coil in her stomach, but she pushed it down. She had learned long ago that reacting with emotion was a luxury she couldn't afford in these situations. It was always twisted, used against her, cited as proof of her aggression. "Ma'am, with all due respect, you're mistaken," Lena said, her voice now firm but still quiet. "I live on the 14th floor. I've lived here for 3 years. This is my car, and this is my spot." She reached for the resident's sticker on her windshield, but Carol waved a dismissive hand. "Oh, I'm sure you have a story. Everyone has a story. The fact is, you don't belong here. I've seen your kind trying to sneak in, using the pool, taking up parking. The standards in this building have fallen precipitously." Her little dog, sensing its owner's agitation, began to bark furiously, its tiny yaps echoing in the concrete garage. A couple walking toward the elevator slowed their pace, their curiosity piqued. Lena unbuckled her seatbelt. She wasn't going to have this conversation through a car window. She was a grown woman, a doctor, a homeowner. She would not be interrogated in her own parking spot. "I'm not going to argue with you," Lena said as she opened her door and stepped out. She was taller than Carol, a fact that seemed to incense the other woman even more. "I've had a very long day. I'm going home." She started to walk away, her hospital bag slung over her shoulder. Carol moved to block her path, her body rigid with indignation. "You think you can just walk away from me? I am on the condo board. I will have you towed and reported for trespassing. The threat was absurd, but the venom behind it was real. You can't trespass in your own home, Lena said, her patience wearing thin. Now, please get out of my way. She tried to step around Carol, but the woman sidestepped with her, a bizarre, confrontational dance. No, I want to see your lease. I want to see your identification. I want to know who let you in here. The couple who had slowed down were now openly staring. A young man getting out of a Jeep a few spots down had his phone out, though he held it discreetly by his side. The audience was growing. Lena knew this was a critical juncture. She could feel the situation spiraling, fueled by this woman's unhinged prejudice. She took a deep, calming breath, the way she did before a difficult incision. You are not entitled to see my personal documents, Lena said, her voice dropping into a lower, more authoritative register. It was the voice she used with panicked interns in the operating room. You are harassing me. If you do not move, I will call security. Carol let out a short, sharp laugh that sounded like a bark. You'll call security? On me? Don't you see the ridiculousness of that? They know me. They know who belongs here. She looked Lena up and down again, a smirk playing on her lips. And who doesn't? That was it. The final, unspoken word that clarified everything. This wasn't about a parking spot. It was about her face, her skin, her presence in a space Carol believed she owned by birthright. And then, Carol's eyes glinted with a fresh wave of malice. She fumbled in her purse, a large, ostentatious designer bag. For a moment, Lena tensed, unsure what the woman was reaching for. Carol's hand emerged, clutching a set of keys. You know what? Carol said, her voice dripping with a sickeningly sweet poison. You're right. You shouldn't have to argue. People like you only understand one thing. She took a deliberate step toward the Prius. Lena's mind raced. She could physically intervene, but that was a trap. A black woman putting her hands on a white woman, no matter the provocation, would only end one way in the eyes of the law. So she stood still, her heart hammering against her ribs. She watched, a silent observer to the violation about to occur. This, Carol declared, loud enough for the growing audience to hear, is for all the undeserving spot hogs who think the rules don't apply to them. With a flourish, she pressed the tip of a long, brass key against the passenger side door of the Prius, just behind the headlight. Then she began to walk, dragging the key with a steady, determined pressure. The sound was visceral, a high-pitched, metallic scream that tore through the quiet garage. It was the sound of violation, of metal being flayed, of paint and primer and clear coat being ripped away. The scratch traveled the entire length of the car, a jagged, silver wound across the dark blue paint, ending with a final, vicious flick near the taillight. Carol stepped back to admire her work, a look of profound satisfaction on her face. She turned back to Lena, a triumphant sneer twisting her features. There, she said, as if she'd just restored cosmic order. Now it looks like it belongs to you. For a long moment, Lena said nothing. She didn't look at the car. She looked directly at Carol Fletcher, her gaze steady and unblinking. The exhaustion she'd felt just minutes ago had vanished, replaced by a crystalline, cold clarity. The surgeon in her took over, assessing the damage, formulating a plan, detaching from the immediate trauma to focus on the necessary procedure. Carol seemed to mistake her silence for fear or submission. What's the matter? She taunted. Cat got your tongue? Or are you finally realizing your place? Lena finally spoke, and her voice was devoid of any emotion except a chilling, surgical precision. You've just committed felony vandalism under State Penal Code 594, she said, her tone as sharp and clean as a scalpel. The damage you've inflicted far exceeds the $1,000 threshold for a misdemeanor. Given the market value for automotive paint and bodywork, that's likely $5,000 to $7,000 in damages, Carol's smirk faltered. This was not the reaction she'd expected. Furthermore, Lena continued, her eyes flicking up for a moment. Your actions are being recorded by at least 2 high-definition security cameras. One is directly above your head, and the other is by the elevator entrance, capturing a perfect profile view. Your face, your actions, your little dog. It's all documented. She then gestured subtly with her chin. In addition, your crime has been witnessed and recorded by at least 3 other residents. The young man in the black Jeep, the couple by the elevator, and the woman who just got out of the red Lexus over there. Hello, she said, nodding slightly to the woman, who quickly looked away, embarrassed to have been noticed. Carol's face, which had been flushed with righteous fury, began to pale. She glanced around, suddenly aware of the silent, staring eyes. The phones were more visible now. And finally, Lena said, her voice dropping even lower, "Your statements to me, referring to my kind, saying I don't belong here, and that my car now looks like it belongs to me after you vandalized it, will be used as evidence to add a hate crime enhancement to the felony charge. That carries a mandatory sentencing guideline." The legal terms, delivered with such calm authority, seemed to suck the air out of the garage. Carol Fletcher, who had been so puffed up with power, suddenly looked small and deflated. Her bravado crumbled, replaced by a flicker of panic. I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, her voice losing its sharp edge. "You're twisting my words. You were threatening me." Lena gave a small, humorless smile. "I never raised my voice. I never threatened you. I never even moved toward you. Every witness here will attest to that. You, on the other hand, blocked my path, verbally harassed me, and then willfully destroyed my property in a premeditated act of malice." She pulled out her own phone. "I am now calling 911 to report this crime. I advise you to remain here. Fleeing the scene will only add to the list of charges against you." Carol stood frozen, the keys still dangling from her hand. The little dog at her feet, finally sensing the shift in power, let out a confused whimper. The confident, righteous crusader of the condo board had vanished, replaced by a common criminal, caught red-handed, her own prejudice having sprung a trap she could not escape. The arrival of the police did little to improve the situation initially. 2 officers from the city precinct responded to the call. The senior officer, a man named Peterson with a thick mustache and a world-weary slump to his shoulders, took one look at the scene and made a series of rapid, unfortunate assumptions. He saw a hysterical, well-dressed white woman in a luxury parking garage and a calm, stoic black woman in scrubs standing beside a damaged economy car. His professional courtesy immediately extended to Carol. "All right, what's going on here?" he asked, directing the question more toward Carol, who had burst into tears the moment she saw the squad car's flashing lights. "Officer, thank God you're here," Carol wailed, pointing a trembling finger at Lena. "This woman, she attacked me. She tried to run me over with her car, and when I confronted her, she got out and started screaming at me. I was terrified. I might have scratched her car by accident while defending myself. It was a masterful, if predictable, performance. A complete fabrication, but delivered with the practiced ease of someone who had used their tears and status as a shield their entire life." Officer Peterson nodded sympathetically, his expression hardening as he turned to Lena. "Is that true?" he asked, his tone laced with suspicion. "Did you threaten this woman?" Lena met his gaze without flinching. "No, officer, that is not true," she said calmly. "Every single word she just said is a lie. Your colleague can take statements from the multiple witnesses who saw and recorded the entire incident. They will confirm that Mrs. Fletcher was the sole aggressor. She verbally harassed me, blocked my path, and then deliberately vandalized my vehicle." Peterson seemed unimpressed. He glanced at the long, deep scratch on the Prius. "Looks like a simple dispute that got out of hand," he sighed, pulling out a notepad. "Let's just get your insurance information exchanged, and we can all go home." Lena felt a surge of cold fury. This was the second act of the play, the one she knew was coming. The dismissal, the minimization, the institutional reflex to protect the person who looked like them, who fit their image of a victim. "No," she said, the word sharp and absolute. "We will not be exchanging insurance information. A crime has been committed. I am the victim of that crime. I want to press charges for felony vandalism with a hate crime enhancement, and I want a full police report filed." Immediately, Officer Peterson's eyebrows shot up. He clearly wasn't used to being given orders, especially not from someone he'd already mentally categorized as the problem. His partner, a younger, quieter officer, shifted his weight uncomfortably. "Ma'am, you need to calm down," Peterson said, his voice taking on a patronizing edge. "You start throwing around words like hate crime, and it complicates things. Are you sure you didn't say something to provoke her?" The question was a slap in the face. It was the classic, insidious query designed to shift blame, to muddy the waters, to suggest that her very presence was a provocation. The only thing that provoked her, officer, was the color of my skin in a place she feels I don't belong, Lena retorted, her voice dangerously quiet. And your line of questioning right now is frankly insulting and unprofessional. I am the victim here. Please do your job. Peterson's face flushed with anger. He took a step closer, using his physical presence to intimidate. Listen, I'm trying to help you out here. You can make this easy, or you can make this hard. Now, I need to see your license and registration. It was a command, not a request. He was reasserting his authority. Carol, seeing the officer siding with her, seemed to regain some of her confidence. She dabbed at her dry eyes with a tissue. She doesn't even live here, officer. She's probably trespassing. My license and registration are in the vehicle I was driving, which is registered to my home address in this building, Lena said, her patience stretched to its breaking point. I will be happy to provide them for your report. After which, you will take my statement, the witness statements, and you will review the security footage that the building manager is already pulling up. Or, if you prefer, we can wait for your supervisor to arrive, and I can explain to him why one of his officers is attempting to dissuade a victim from reporting a felony hate crime. She held his gaze, refusing to back down. The mention of a supervisor was a calculated move, a challenge to his authority that he couldn't ignore. The younger officer looked at Peterson, a silent question in his eyes. The witnesses were still there, their phones still pointed in their direction. The situation was no longer a simple parking dispute. It was becoming a public test of procedure and bias. Peterson's jaw tightened. He was being outmaneuvered, and he knew it. Fine, he bit out, his voice tight with resentment. Let's see your ID. Lena retrieved her wallet and handed him her driver's license. He took it, his eyes scanning the information. Name, Lena Washington. Address, 1412 Sterling Crest. He then looked at the registration and insurance documents, all of which confirmed her residency. His theory of her being an outsider, an interloper, was evaporating. He was now forced to confront the facts. He handed the documents back with a grunt. All right, he said, clicking his pen. I need to get your information for the report. Full name is Lena Washington. Occupation. He asked the question dismissively, a routine box to check, clearly expecting an answer like caregiver, student, or something he could easily process and file away. This was the moment. The moment where the carefully constructed persona of the aggressive black woman in the cheap car would shatter against the bedrock of reality. Lena looked him straight in the eye. I am Dr. Lena Washington, she said, her voice clear and steady, resonating with an authority he could not have anticipated. I am a senior attending neurosurgeon at University General Hospital. I specialize in cerebrovascular and skull-based surgery. A stunned silence fell over their small group. Officer Peterson's pen froze over his notepad. Carol Fletcher's jaw went slack. The younger officer's eyes widened. The title, doctor, and the specialty, neurosurgeon, were so far outside the box they had put her in that it seemed to short-circuit their brains. But Lena wasn't finished. She knew that a title alone wasn't always enough. She had to dismantle their entire framework of assumptions. I also serve on the hospital's medical ethics committee, she continued, her tone becoming even more precise. And I hold an advisory position on the state's medical licensing board, where we often review cases of professional misconduct. Before I went to medical school, I paid for my undergraduate degree by working for 6 years as a senior paralegal at the civil rights law firm of Erickson, Bailey, and Associates. I am intimately familiar with both state and federal statutes regarding discrimination, harassment, and the legal obligations of law enforcement in responding to bias-motivated crimes. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. She looked from Peterson's stunned face to Carol's ashen one. So, to be perfectly clear, officer, I know my rights. I know your responsibilities. And I know, with absolute certainty, the consequences for you and your department should you fail to discharge them properly. Now, are you going to take my statement, or do we need to call your watch commander and the Internal Affairs Bureau to supervise? The power dynamic in the cold, concrete garage didn't just shift, it underwent a seismic reversal. Officer Peterson, who had been oozing condescending authority just moments before, now looked like a rookie caught making a catastrophic mistake. His face, which had been flushed with aggression, was now pale with anxiety. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. The swagger was gone, replaced by a rigid, almost fearful professionalism. "Yes, Dr. Washington," he said, the title feeling foreign and clumsy on his tongue. "My apologies. We will, we will take your full statement right now." He gestured to his younger partner. "Jacobs, get statements from all the witnesses. Now, and get their contact information." The younger officer, looking relieved to have clear, correct instructions, scurried off to speak with the small crowd of onlookers, who were now whispering amongst themselves, their expressions a mixture of shock and vindication. Carol Fletcher seemed to shrink. The color had drained from her face, leaving behind a pasty, terrified mask. The woman she had dismissed as a lowlife, an undeserving spot hog, was a neurosurgeon, a pillar of the community, a person with more power, more prestige, and more intellectual firepower than Carol could ever dream of. She had picked a fight with a titan, assuming she was swatting at a fly. It was a misunderstanding," Carol began to babble, her voice a pathetic whimper. "I was just upset. I didn't mean anything by it. My husband, he knows people. He can make this go away." Lena ignored her completely, turning her full attention to Officer Peterson, who was now writing furiously in his notepad, his handwriting suddenly neat and meticulous. "Please be sure to note in the report that Mrs. Fletcher has just attempted to use her husband's influence to intimidate a victim in the presence of a police officer," Lena said crisply. Peterson's head jerked up, his eyes wide with panic. He nodded quickly, making another note. The building manager, a harried-looking man named Mr. Davies, arrived, his tie askew. He had been alerted by security. "Dr. Washington, I am so sorry. I came as soon as I heard. We have the footage. It's crystal clear. We will cooperate in every possible way." He glared at Carol. "Mrs. Fletcher, this is an egregious violation of our community standards and the law. Your behavior is unacceptable." Carol opened her mouth to protest, but no sound came out. She was adrift, her usual weapons of status and privilege rendered useless, even turned against her. Within minutes, the scene was one of sober, official procedure. Officer Peterson took Lena's statement with the attentiveness of a court stenographer. He bagged the keys from Carol's hand as evidence. The witnesses eagerly gave their accounts, their own videos and photos being forwarded to the officer's official email. The final, humiliating blow for Carol came when Peterson, after a brief, quiet conversation on his radio, turned to her. "Carol Fletcher," he said, his voice now flat and devoid of any of its earlier warmth. "You are under arrest for felony vandalism and malicious mischief. Please turn around and place your hands behind your back." The sound of the handcuffs clicking shut echoed in the garage. Carol let out a strangled sob as she was led to the squad car, her rhinestone leash being handed off to a bewildered Mr. Davies. As she was placed in the back of the car, she looked back at Lena, her eyes pleading. But Lena simply stood there, her expression unreadable, watching the system she knew so well finally, belatedly, begin to work. As the police car pulled away, its lights flashing silently, Lena finally allowed herself to feel the deep, trembling exhaustion return, but this time it was mixed with a grim, hard-won satisfaction. She had not raised her voice. She had not lost her cool. She had simply held her ground and forced the truth to be seen. The fight was far from over, but the first, most important battle had been won. The legal process that followed was as methodical and relentless as Lena herself. The district attorney's office, armed with irrefutable video evidence and multiple credible witnesses, pressed criminal charges against Carol Fletcher. She was charged with felony vandalism and a hate crime, the latter charge being a direct result of Lena's insistence and the corroborating testimony of the witnesses who had heard Carol's racist remarks. But for Lena, the criminal case was only one part of the equation. It was about state-sanctioned punishment. What she wanted was personal accountability and a consequence so significant it would serve as a public deterrent. She contacted a former colleague from her paralegal days, a sharp, tenacious civil rights attorney named Benjamin Carter. "Ben," she said over the phone the next day, "I have a case for you. It's personal." She laid out the facts, her voice as calm and detached as if she were describing a patient's medical chart. Ben listened, a low whistle escaping his lips when she got to the part about the keying. "Lena, this is airtight," he said when she finished. "This isn't just a property damage claim. This is a clear-cut case of harassment, emotional distress, and bias-motivated intimidation. We're not just going to make her pay for the car. We're going to make her pay for the audacity. The lawsuit they filed was a work of legal art. It named not only Carol Fletcher but also her husband, under the state's community property laws, and put a lien on their shared assets. The complaint sought damages for the car, of course, but that was the smallest part. It demanded substantial sums for intentional infliction of emotional distress, citing Lena's high-stress profession and the psychological burden of being racially targeted in her own home. It sought punitive damages designed to punish Carol and deter others, arguing that her actions were part of a pattern of behavior that tears at the social fabric. The total sought was a staggering $2 million. Carol Fletcher's legal defense was a predictable mix of denial and victim blaming. Her high-priced lawyer attempted to paint Lena as an overly sensitive, litigious professional looking for a payday. They claimed Carol's words were taken out of context and that the keying was an impulsive, regretful act, not a hate-fueled crime. The deposition was where their defense completely imploded. Ben Carter, calm and methodical, cross-examined Carol for 6 hours. He had her recount her version of events, which was filled with inconsistencies and blatant lies. Then, he played the security camera footage on a large screen, silent, clinical, and damning. He showed her the videos taken by witnesses, where her voice was clear, her words ugly and unambiguous. He presented blown-up screenshots of her social media posts, a long history of thinly veiled racist comments, complaints about urban elements in her neighborhood, and shares from extremist news sites. Under the weight of the evidence, Carol crumbled. She contradicted herself. She cried. She lashed out at Ben. By the end of the day, her credibility was in ruins. Her own lawyer looked defeated. The judge, a no-nonsense woman who had presided over civil rights cases for 2 decades, saw the case for exactly what it was. After reviewing the evidence and the deposition transcripts, she urged the Fletcher's attorney to settle. Your client is going to be annihilated in front of a jury, she warned him in chambers. The optics are a catastrophe. Settle this now, or the number is only going to go up, faced with a guaranteed public humiliation and a potentially even larger jury award. The Fletchers capitulated. The final settlement was for $1,700,000. The check, delivered by courier to Ben Carter's office, was a tangible symbol of victory. When Ben called Lena to tell her, she was in her office, reviewing brain scans. She listened quietly, a slow smile spreading across her face. Thank you, Ben, she said simply. You did good work. The story became a local sensation, picked up by news outlets, and amplified on social media. The video of Carol keying the car went viral. She became another internet meme, a cautionary tale of bigotry meeting its match. The Sterling Crest Condo Board issued a public apology to Dr. Washington and initiated proceedings to force the Fletchers to sell their unit. Officer Peterson was placed on administrative leave pending an internal affairs investigation into his handling of the initial call, his career permanently tarnished. A few weeks later, Lena drove her new car home. It was a brand-new, top-of-the-line Audi e-tron, a sleek, silent, electric SUV in deep midnight blue. It was a purchase made not out of necessity, but out of principle. She pulled into her spot, G27. As she got out, a neighbor she recognized from the night of the incident was walking by. He paused and smiled at her. Nice car, doctor, he said, his voice warm with respect. It suits you, Lena smiled back. Thank you, she said. I think so too. She had parked her symbol of victory in the exact spot where her ordeal had begun. That evening, she made the first of several large wire transfers. The bulk of the settlement money went to the Equal Justice Initiative and the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. A portion was used to establish a scholarship for promising black medical students at her alma mater. She had turned an act of ugly hatred into a powerful engine for good. Her vindication wasn't just in the money or the public apology. It was in the quiet, unshakable knowledge that she had faced down raw prejudice not with anger, but with excellence, and had forced the system to bend toward justice. The scratch on her old Prius was gone, but the lesson it taught the world would leave a permanent mark.